This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The views expressed on the following program are not necessarily those of WPSL. We say that about everything. And you're also encouraged to like and share them on Facebook because this is the African American Scene presented by Howard Insurance and hosted every Wednesday night at this time by Rudy Howard.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. Glad to be back with you here on a Wednesday night. I'll tell you, I think that was the longest hiatus that I have had since I've been doing this show. I don't think I've ever missed 2 weeks in a row. A week maybe, but not 2 weeks in a row.
It's kind of weird for me, too, because I used to not ever take holidays off, but now we take Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, and Christmas and New Year's are way too close together.
Yeah, that's right, exactly, yeah. So I guess because they both fell on Wednesday, so. But anyway, I'm back, and I know that you're all wired up and ready to do battle. And we're going to have open mic night tonight. And I would just like to say, I, as a kid from the 60s, I'm eternally optimistic about the future that lays ahead. I would say that if I have any regrets in 2019, I lost some relationships due to political heated discussions, and that's a shame because we couldn't discuss it without coming unglued. Some of the time it was my fault. I came a little unglued, and then some of the time it was the other party's fault. We just could not sometimes come to some reasonable meeting of the minds.
I had more trouble with family members.
Yeah.
You know, that separates, it isolates families.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like one of the things I had a disagreement about was Amendment 4 and the additional steps they tried to place on the incarcerated people that had been had their rights restored after the amendment had been properly passed. I did another battle over Kavanaugh, which was kind of a stupid disagreement because my disagreement with Kavanaugh, not whether he was innocent or guilty, it was that there wasn't an adequate amount of investigation allowed to determine whether he was innocent or guilty. And I would say this, and I said this to the person I was having the disagreement with, I would bet money that if Kavanaugh had said, I did some dumb things when I was a kid, and I occasionally made some bad judgment, and that was many years ago, it probably would have went away. And most people would have accepted it because we are all about trying to, in most cases, we're about trying to give people a second chance. And I think people would have accepted that excuse and moved on. The other thing I had a very contentious debate about, and we ended up just cursing each other out, which is unfortunate, was about the money in Iran. They, and this continues to this day, people insisting that President Obama gave our money to Iran. And that is a bald-faced untruth. And that one really gets me because why would I, even if I am a progressive, feel that it would be okay to take $150 million of our money and just give it to Iran in exchange for nothing? Why would I support that? That's just like bizarre to me. I don't know, but anyway. And then lastly, the other thing that caused angst was a discussion about the economy. And of course, we're doing an open mic night tonight. I'm going to start with an article about the patriotic millionaires who I've gone on and on and on about them, but I am just so enamored with the fact that these rich folks have really taken the bull by the horns and is trying to get tax fairness and close the income inequality gap. And this article, and I'm going to direct you, was written by Sheila Kohalatar and is dated December 30th, 2019. And the title of the article is "The Ultra Wealthy Who Argue That They Should Be Paying Higher Taxes." And the article is centered around Abigail Disney, who is the granddaughter. She's the granddaughter of Roy O. Disney, who founded the Disney Company with his younger brother, Walt Disney. And I think you'll find it interesting, some of the things that she has to say. Second item of interest, Thomas Hofffeller has died. His daughter discovered some files on his computer. Hofffeller is the one who has been largely responsible for the mapping of districts to draw up for advantages to the Republican Party. And she exposes the whole plot. And that article you can look up is dated January 5th, 2020, and it's on NPR. And she is Stephanie Hofeller, and she's the daughter of Thomas Hofeller. Her and her dad had a fallout over her kids. So, but she has exposed. She has files and documents, and some of those files and documents have already been used in court cases to contest some of the designs of the districts that have been disadvantages to people of color. And many of you have told me you didn't believe it existed, and we've had this debate in the past. Well, surprise. It existed, and Thomas Hofeller was the architect of many of those designs of redistricting throughout the country. Very interesting. Next item of interest to you may be, all we've seen is impeachment. I'd be interested to see what you think about impeachment. Do you think it's improper? But I will tell you this. I'm reading a book right now. I think I told you this before, and I've had to pause, but I just got back into it again recently. Understanding the Constitution. She is, I believe, she's a Harvard law professor, and she breaks down the Constitution in a very simple language and breaks it down so that you can understand all of the little intricacies of the Constitution. One of the things that she has already enlightened me of is that there are several areas of the Constitution where there is gray. And she also points out that while the conservatives tend to say they want a strict interpretation of the strict judgments based on the Constitution, there are areas wherein they have made decisions that absolutely call for judgment by the jurists to come up with the decisions that have been made. And she points those out to us, and she talks, and she even, and it's a pretty current book, because she's talked about some of the things that have happened with Trump, and she talks about the need to protect our Constitution. I think, just very, very interesting, and I would think it's a book worthwhile reading. And we take a break. I'll pull it up on my tablet and tell you what her name is, so you can find the book, because it is a very, very interesting book. It's Understanding the Constitution. And finally, here's one for you. As of just yesterday, does Iran have any reasons to distrust us? I'm going to pose the question that I put on Facebook today. And what I said on Facebook was, I am not a supporter of Salami. He was a despicable character, and he was guilty of killing American people. But what I am asking is, given our past history with Iran, if you were in the Middle East, would you trust us? That's a tough one. I mean, I don't know how many people are honest enough. I got some really honest answers on Facebook. I got people wrote back, and some people just said, no, I would not trust us. And that's not anti-American. That's just considering all the facts that go into our relationship with Iran. And if you dare challenge me, I will give you plenty of information that would tell you why they might have some apprehension about trusting us. And that doesn't mean I'm anti-American. That doesn't mean that I support this guy that we just took out. It just means that when we consider the whole picture, and that's what I endeavor to do, to consider the whole picture, that picture has some blood dripping on it that is the blood of American hands. And that's okay. But we just have to, listen, I want to put it to you like this. I can remember growing up, one of the things that my father was always saying, now just tell me the truth. You're already in trouble. Tell me the truth. And boy, I'd look at him and I'd go, okay, does this mean a 50% butt whooping, or does that mean a 25% butt whooping? You know what I'm saying, Cliff?
I didn't have that option.
He said, tell the truth. And, on occasion, not all the time, but on occasion when I tell the truth, he would just look at me in disgust, and then I didn't get that butt whooping. And so I think what I'm trying to say to you with a sense of humor is, we've done some things that were not very nice, and if you put them all together on a plate and you can look at them objectively, you could say to yourself, I can at least understand. You don't have to agree with Iran. I'm not asking you to agree with him. I want you to at least be able to say you can understand why they don't trust us. So there you have it. So if you want to comment on any of those topics, please feel free to pick up the phone, 340-1590. Geez, I expected my phone to be jumping off the hook. You haven't had a chance to fight with me in 2 weeks.
Well, you haven't told them the good news about tonight yet. It's going to be a longer show tonight, folks. Get an extra 15 minutes because we have IRSC basketball. We got a little pregame show with Greg Wyatt coming up at 7:15. And Palm Beach State in town to take on the Pioneers. So stick around for that. And, hey, the lines are always open around here at 340-1590.
Yes, and Greg was gracious enough to give me an additional 15 minutes, so we won't be over exactly at 7 tonight. So pick up that phone if any of those topics that I've discussed interest you. Let me start with the Patriotic Millionaires article. And I know you guys are probably tired of me talking about the Patriotic Millionaires, but these people just blow me away completely. This article, she starts off talking to Abigail Disney. And Abigail Disney, again, as I said, she is the granddaughter of Roy Disney, who was one of the founders of the Disney Corporation with his younger brother, Walt Disney, who we all know, the famous Walt Disney. And we got Winnie on line 1. Yes, Winnie.
How you doing? Happy New Year to you, Clear, to the whole family.
Yes, Happy New Year to you, too.
Yeah, good. About that guy who shot down in over there, but that's a good deal.
What's that?
The guy they shot,
Oh,
over there.
Salami, the guy that they killed. Yeah.
You think that's a good deal?
I don't want to put it like that. What I'm going to say is, now this is my judgment. I don't think that was necessary. I think if you've done any of the reading, Bush had a chance to take him out. President Obama had a chance to take him out. And neither one of them did it because they were in the calculation of what would happen afterwards. They were unsettled about the consequences of doing it. Do I think he is a terrible human being that killed American people? The answer is yes. Do I think that could have been handled another way? My answer to that is yes.
Yeah. Well, he had raised $46 million fundraising, and I say, yeah, and like people still like it for some reason. That's a lot of money that he get the fundraising, $46 million. Joe Biden and Elizabeth Warren, they did some fundraising. People like that, they say he raised more than they have right now. Donald Trump. Yeah. But, I could be wrong, but he going to run again, and he might win again. So we'll see. We'll see.
He might.
But that is peace, huh?
He might win again. I wouldn't say no, but I hope not. But I think he could win again.
Yeah, and that impeachment, well, you feel like he's not going to be removed. He's still going to be sitting in that same chair. He's probably not going to be removed, so how that goes. He's still going to be there. He's still going to be there.
I think. Okay, I think you're right. I don't think that the chances are he won't be removed, but there's some really explosive information out there that if it comes to light, that it may move some senators. Because here's what you have to keep in mind.
Oh, okay.
And senators will keep this in mind too. This is historical. The people that vote on this will go down in history. 100 years from now, people will read about this, and they will read what senators had the backbone to vote in which direction they voted. So when you, as a senator, I know I would, with that burden on my back, I would want to be very careful about the decision I made, so that when I go down, if I go down in the history books, I go down the right way. And I'm not saying what the right way is. I'm just saying that should be a very serious calculation that someone would make rather than just standing on a straight party line.
Yeah, they say the Senate Republicans, the majority Republicans, they go to the Senate. So I was looking at CNN, and they say, majority of Republicans,
Yeah.
most of majority of Republicans in the Senate. Okay, we'll be talking. Call you back
Okay.
again.
All right.
Thank you, Winnie.
Thank you, Winnie. So, yeah, I think there's a heavy burden that will be on you when you make that vote, because you will go down in the annals of history, since this is only the third time this has happened in our country's history. Every vote will be recorded in the history book. And Lord, I sure wouldn't want to be recorded on the wrong side just to stand with the party. I'd want to be making the right decision. I don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican, making the right decision.
Well, the decision to have somebody bumped off is a decision that you and I, neither one of us want to have to make that.
Oh, no. That's a tough, I admit, that's a very, very, very tough decision. But, your office requires that you make that decision. So, but anyway, so let's get back to Abigail. Abigail is a member of the Patriotic Millionaires. And she said that, when she grew up, her family had a Boeing 737 private aircraft. Well, that's a commercial-sized aircraft. So she grew up flying all over the place in this plane like it was a playpen. And she says that in a particular trip that she was taken from California to New York, and she lives in New York, and she was traveling alone, there was a full staff on duty to cater to all her needs. And she got into the queen-size bed on the plane and buckled herself in with the safety belt and stretched across the mattress. And she began to think that this was wrong. She was in this 737 private jet plane by herself with a full staff of people flying from California to New York. And she said for the first time that struck her like a bolt, that there was something not quite right about that. She further goes on to say that she realized that luxuries she and her family enjoyed were really a way of walling themselves off from the world, which made it easier to ignore certain economic realities. I think that is a loaded, powerful statement. And I think while she says that as a millionaire, I think there are many, unfortunately, middle-class people, like some of you listening, who have been walled off from the rest of the world and live in your little cocoon so that you don't understand the economic realities of how everyday people live. Well, she was contacted by a custodian from Disneyland who asked her for help. The local in California had been trying to get $15 an hour minimum wage, and they had and been successful. Now, her dilemma was she had never actually been part of the executive structure, and she didn't want to step on people's toes. But obviously, her name brought forth a certain amount of leverage, and people would listen to her. So she spent a considerable amount of time trying to think about what she should do. And what she came up with was she was going to make a trip to California, and she asked for them to quietly gather together some people who were working at Disneyland that she could talk to on a one-on-one basis. And she did. She sat in a circle and talked with people. She talked to a hairstylist, Radhika Peterson, who was a full-time hairstylist at Disney, who had been sleeping in her car. A 30-year veteran of the park said that she, too, had been homeless for a time, and that some of the workers said they were on food stamps. So she's sitting there listening, and she's listening to these people who had been sleeping in their car because they had no place to live, and people working for Disney that were on food stamps. And I did a whole segment about how I felt about large corporations that were very wealthy and had employees on food stamps. I think they're 20 times worse than the person that's on food stamps and goes and buys a porterhouse steak, which seems to upset you. I am more upset with the fact that you make $40-50 billion and then you got somebody who is getting food stamps, which is taking money out of my pocket. I'm more upset about that than the person that gets a steak on his food stamps. So the president of the local union, who was attending the meeting, was explaining to her the situation. Now, the CEO, Mr. Bob Iger, had been extremely successful, and he was responsible for the acquisition of 21st Century Fox and Marvel, Pixar, and Lucasfilms. So those assets amounted to almost $60 million by itself. His annual salary was $39.3 million. And while everybody said that he brought great value for what he did to develop the company, his salary was 1,400 times more than the average salary of the worker at Disney. And as she began to ponder that, as much as now she has known Mr. Iger for a long time, and as she began to ponder that, she thought there was something wrong with that picture. He certainly deserved to be well compensated, but 1,400 times the amount that the average worker made at Disney, that seems to be a little out of balance. Now, this is her discovery. Now, she joined the Patriotic Millionaires in 2011. And they have been actively seeking to have Congress change some of the laws to help with income inequality. And as one of, as Abigail says, they are participating, the rich people in this country are participating in a social and economic process that is destroying actual human lives. And I'm not going along with it, especially not with my name attached. Now, I want you guys to really get this here. This is not some left-wing wacko talking about socialism. This is a rich person saying there's something out of balance here. There's something out of balance. And I'm rich and I'm telling you it's not right. And this is not a bunch of brown people telling you this. This is a bunch of rich white people telling you there is something wrong with our economic system, the way it's structured, that is causing such gross inequality. The patriotic millionaires now have more than 200 members in 34 states. They include entrepreneurs, software engineers, Wall Street investors, industrialists, and inheritors of family fortunes. These are the people that make up the patriotic millionaires. And as of this article, they estimate there's about 500,000 millionaires in the United States. And you have 200 members that are a part of the patriotic millionaires. Now, while the initial thrust of the patriotic millionaires was to raise taxes, their more pressing issue now is the goal of pressuring the wealthy peers to confront what they believe are the destructive effects of trickle-down economics, the idea which has driven U.S. policy decisions for several decades and has largely been debunked, that reducing taxes on businesses and the wealthy will benefit low-income workers. How many times have you heard me say that? Now, you got a rich person telling you this. Now, when I was telling you, there's a couple of you called up and argued with me about this, but here's a rich person telling you that that idea is a fraud. And it was a fraud at the outset, but it is proven to be fraudulent. That the rich, by cutting taxes on the rich, will create more wealth on the people downstream. So I guess what I'm saying to you is pay attention. There are people out there that are concerned with you. And some of you who disagree with me, you would benefit from some of the things that they're trying to do, because they're trying to make a system that is more equitable for everyone. Now, one of the things that it was said by this Princeton economist, Sean Willents, we live in a world where supply-side economics, which has always been a fraud, has become a religion. So some of you have accepted that as the absolute truth. One of my relationships that I described in the beginning was destroyed because he and I got into it about this trickle-down economics and that it didn't work. But let me tell you what they say and what I say about it too, and why it's good to think about a different means of distribution for the economy. when you put money in the middle class, and this is what they're trying to get people to understand, and little old Rudy Howard in Port St. Lucie, Florida, been trying to get you to understand the same thing. When you put money in the hands of the people in the middle, they spend it. So the typical theory, and Brian has called me up and fought with me about this, is that if you raise the wages, it will reduce work opportunities for people. Maybe in some instances, but the other side of the argument that happens is when people have more disposable income, especially the people in the middle class who can't sock it all away, they're going to spend it. Spending that money in our economy will create more jobs. That's the reality. That's why you should want people to make more money. So a person like me will be able to sell an insurance policy to somebody, and they're not saying to me, as one person yesterday, I talked to a lady, and she's retired, and she wants a PIP and property damage policy. And for those of you who don't understand what that means is she wants a policy with no bodily injury, and she owns a home. And I tried my best to talk her out of that. I don't even like to sell those. And I only began to do it when I found out it was illegal to not sell them, because for years I just said, if you want that, go talk to somebody else. And her thing was, I don't have any extra money. And after I explained to her, I said, do you understand what would happen to you if you got involved in an accident and it was your fault? She said, well, I'm a careful driver. I've never had a ticket, and I've never been in an accident. I said, well, you don't think that's possible? She says, well, I guess it's possible. I said, well, if you have no bodily injury insurance and somebody gets hurt, guess what? There's only one avenue. They got to go after you. And I didn't even go on to explain that then she would have to do a SR22, which would make her insurance go 5 times higher than what it is. But those are the kinds of decisions that people have to make. And so instead of having a policy that was maybe $600 every 6 months, she got a policy that's $330 every 6 months with no coverage and putting herself at risk. So I would dare say if that lady had some more disposable income, she probably would not have made that decision. So I gave you plenty to think about with the Patriotic Millionaires. Again, my phone number is 340-1590. That's 340-1590. We're going to take a little break, and I guess you guys didn't miss me. But we're going to take a little break, and then we'll be right back, so don't touch that dial.
Hey, 340-1590, you're missing out if you don't chime in. We're going to hold this show over an extra 15 minutes tonight to make sure that you take advantage of your opportunity to call in to the African American scene. We'll be right back.
Serving the entire Treasure Coast, Howard Insurance and Associates in Port St. Lucie offers a wide variety of insurance products, along with the very best customer service. Whether you're shopping for the best homeowners coverage at the most affordable value, contact Rudy Howard's team at Howard Insurance and Associates. If you need coverage for your vehicle, call Howard Insurance and Associates, 343-9878. That's 343-9878. Maybe you're planning to add a boat, motorcycle, or RV. Call Howard Insurance and Associates for your free quote at 343-9878 and get the coverage you need at a cost that will fit your budget. For home or business, auto or recreational vehicle, choose Howard Insurance and Associates, 600 Southwest Darwin Boulevard, Suite 206, Port St. Lucie. And for your free rate quote, call them at 343-9878, 343-9878. WPSL Storm Team 5 Treasure Coast weather is brought to you by Seacoast Air Conditioning. Now with our forecast, here's meteorologist Steve Villanueva.
Hey there, everyone. Steve Villanueva here. As we head into tonight, it won't be as cool. Overnight lows will be in the 50s and the 60s, but it will be windy.
We need to reboot.
Over the next few days, we'll have wind gusts of around 30 miles an hour, really through Saturday. Strong area of higher pressure to the north will stir up the winds, but also start to warm us up. Each and every day does get warmer as we head into the weekend. At that point in time, temperatures in the lower 80s, so we will be way above average, but by Sunday, the winds finally start to back on off. I'm WPTV Storm Team 5 meteorologist Steve Villanueva for WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
At Seacoast Air Conditioning, they believe in 3 basic fundamentals: answer the phone, show up on time, and fix the problem right the first time. Seacoast Air, family owned and operated since 1982, waiting to answer your call 24/7.
Comfort crisis? Don't roast. Call Seacoast.
This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
Welcome back to the African American scene. Once again, here's your host from Howard Insurance, Rudy Howard.
Yes. I hope you enjoyed that information that I shared with you about the patriotic millionaires. Now, here's another thing I found absolutely fascinating because it responds to a discussion that we've had many times in the past. Stephanie Hofeller is the daughter of Thomas Hofeller. Thomas Hofeller is the architect of many of the voter redistricting and voter suppression tactics that have been used across the country. And Stephanie, upon her father's death, was going through some of his things and found all of this information that he had used to advocate for changing voter zones and putting voter suppression tactics in place throughout the country. And Thomas Hofeller's former company, Geographic Strategies, has been suing, trying to keep that information from being exposed, but she has exposed it. And it has been used, it was used in the North Carolina lawsuit, which, as you know, was, it was ruled that they had targeted the African American and brown population specifically to diminish their votes. Part of the information that was used in that was developed from this information of Stephanie Hofeller. And Chuck, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Rudy. Let's hope we can hit it off together good this year.
Okay.
All right. I've listened to your talk about the patriotic millionaire. As an independent, it fascinates me with the way that you pay attention to how much these people make and compare it to the people that work for them. And I'm just curious, what are you trying to get at when you talk about this? What is your end game?
Well, okay. Well, first let me correct you that there's no end game here for me. I'm sharing information with you by what Abigail Disney described. Now, if you want to ask my opinion about it, I will share this with you, and I will use the CEO of Costco as the best example. The CEO of Costco makes somewhere between $3 to $5 million a year, something on that order. And he's been asked on more than one occasion, why do you limit yourself to that? Because people at Costco, his employees, make a substantial amount of money. So it is his opinion, how much money do I need after I'm making $5 million a year? So I guess if you're asking me from a personal perspective, because what I was sharing with you was a perspective shared in the article by Abigail Disney, from a personal perspective, I would think if you're making, well, let me just say this, and this is probably because I'm a liberal or a progressive, there's no way I would run a company and I'd be making $50 million a year and the people that were working for me were making $7 an hour. I couldn't live with myself with that ratio. That to me is just ridiculous. That's me.
Okay.
But that's me personally.
All right. Well, what about the Walton children? They're making billions a year. And they're out doing Abigail Disney by, she's a pauper compared to them.
That's true. And if you've been
go ahead.
Go ahead. And if you've been listening to me for any length of time, I have been on them big time. See, because here's where and the lady called me last time I was on and thanked me for opening her eyes to this. Here's the thing, Chuck, and what's really important here. Real important. The average conservative moderate person gets very aggravated if a person on food stamps or SNAP gets one extra anything that they don't deserve. They feel like they're being ripped off, okay?
Okay.
Walton's, the Walmart company is making, all those individuals are making all of that money, and then we have to pay Medicaid and food stamps for their employees. They're ripping us off 20 times worse than the person that got an extra food stamp or a porterhouse steak with their food stamp money. Because what they've done is they've pushed their benefits onto us for us to pay for.
Well, when I worked for them, I was making $14 an hour. I had stocks. I could have gone into their insurance plan, but what I had was cheaper, so I didn't involve myself in that.
You're not a fair example. You know why?
Why is that?
Because you had retired from the military, so you had another form of pay.
Well, of course.
Okay,
yeah,
so let's make sure. I happen to know that because you and I have had a past relationship. So I don't want you misleading my listeners. You were making $14 an hour, but you also had
that wasn't because I was ex-military. That was what I'd earned over working for them over the years.
Well, I understand that.
Yes. No, that's the truth. I do have health insurance through the military.
Okay, all right.
That's no problem. I'm honest about that.
Okay.
It's just they offered other things, but when I noticed I got out right after Obama got elected. I left Walmart in 2011 because I needed a hip replacement, and I was old enough. The guy at Social Security told me, "Hey, by the time you're 93, this will be the time you start realizing you're losing money." So I retired and left them, but they were also cutting people from full time. The day shift was really going berserk because of the Obamacare, HCAA, whatever you want to call it, was coming down the pike. Walmart was cutting everybody to part-time, and so that they didn't have to pay them the medical insurance. Yeah. So
what do you think about that?
Well, I don't think that was right at all.
Okay.
Not at all. No. See, but I'm just, I'm hearing, not just from you, I'm hearing from a lot of other sources that these people aren't paying their fair share of taxes. Why are we not getting on mass to get, and other people, representatives, to get the loopholes in this thing, in the tax things, closed up?
Because you have been sold, the public has been sold, like I just read from the article, that it's a religion. It's become a religion. It was originally a thought that, trickled down economics, but it's now become a religion. And people think that that is the way to increase economic opportunity in this country, which is to trickle down economics. Now, what it is actually, the reality is it's diminishing the middle class more and more and more, and making harder and harder for people to survive as the level of inflation goes up and wages are not going up correspondingly. So, but what it will take people like you who say, yeah, you know what, I might be a little bit on the conservative side, but I don't think this is right. And because I think everybody that's a patriotic millionaire is not a progressive. I just think there's some people who have a lot of money and have said to themselves, this just isn't right. That's all it takes.
All right. Well, let me let you go. Hey, give me on Messenger. I'd like to get back talking with you again.
Okay. All right.
If you want to. It's up to you.
All right. Okay.
All right. Talk with you later, Rudy.
Okay. Take care. Bye-bye.
And I got to make us legal right now because we're going to extend Rudy's show 15 minutes tonight. Right now, it's about time for the show to end, but we're going to stay because we have IRSC basketball with a pregame show at 7:15 with Greg Wyatt standing by over in the Fort Pierce campus on the basketball court, ready to get a game on. So this is WPSL Port St. Lucie. There, now we're legal. We continue now with the African-American scene.
Okay. So you have an opportunity to still call in tonight if you still want to talk about any of the things that I have discussed so far. That number is 340-1590. So yeah, I that was a good call from Chuck. We haven't talked in a while, so it was kind of nice to talk to him. So let's see what we have here, and we got Daniel on line one. Yes, sir.
Rudy, I just had a couple questions for you, and I'll hang up and let you answer them. One of the questions is aren't you proud of our President Trump of putting more African Americans to work is one question. And the other one is I'd like to know who you think is going to be the Democratic candidate against Trump. And do you think they can beat him?
Okay. First question. Answer the first question. I don't know that I buy the fact that he is solely responsible for the decrease in African American unemployment. I'll answer that. But the statistics would seem to indicate that he has reduced African American unemployment. So I must acknowledge that and give him that credit. Now, as far as who is going to be the candidate that would defeat Trump, I'm not sure yet. I'm still trying to make up my mind because there's a couple of people that I would have liked to see in contention who may be falling out of contention. But I do think that Trump is vulnerable, and I hope, I make no secret about it, I really hope that he is defeated because I think he has been an absolute disaster for us as President of the United States, more so than any president in my lifetime. And I'm 68 years old, so I got quite a few presidents under my belt. Just an absolute disaster. And What disturbs me most is the damage that he's caused with our allies. Our allies don't trust us because of his incessant and continuing lying all the time. And I said over a year ago that I was afraid that that would come back and hurt us, because at a time of crisis, when we need assistance from our allies, typically all we would have to do is go to our allies and say, look, we want you to join us in this, and they sign on. Britain, France, Germany, boom, they sign on. Not anymore. They are very distrustful of anything that he brings forth, and I think that's very threatening to us as a country. So those are my answers. I reluctantly give credit, since the statistics say that he has reduced African-American unemployment, and I have to be, I always talk about facts, so that is a fact. And I hope that we have another president. So there's where I stand on that.
7:03 at WPSL. We're with the African-American scene in overtime.
Yes.
Going up to 7:15. So
yeah, so we got about 12 minutes left.
Yeah,
so again, if you want
time for a call.
If you want to call, that number again is 340-1590. So here's that other question that I put out there. And nobody's called to talk about this one. Does Iran have any reasons to be distrustful of the United States? Do you think, we don't trust Iran, but do you think Iran has any reasons to be distrustful of the United States?
Same argument it's always been about religion.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Well, yeah, I think if we go back and let me give a little bit of a history lesson here for those who are inclined to want to accept factual information. In 1953, Britain and the U.S. threw out the former leader of Iran because they wanted to have access to the oil, and they put in the Shah. The Shah was living high on the hog because Britain and the U.S. were reaping the benefits of the oil production that was coming out of Iran. In the 70s, as you recall, we went through the hostage crisis because we had kept the Shah in spite of the fact that the people did not want the Shah in. The Shah was raping his people and living a life of luxury, okay, against the will of the people. And we had kept him in power. So therein lies part of what has created a tension that exists between the United States and Iran. So, not to mention the fact that in 1988, we shot down a civilian Iranian aircraft and killed 290 people. Now let me preface all of those statements. Those are not anti-American statements. Those are statements of fact. And the purpose of me making those statements is to give you your mind an opening so you can see both sides of the argument. And the other side of the argument is, if you are Iranian, I may have a little bit of a problem being trustful of the United States. There you have it. So think about that. Do you think they might have a reason to not trust us? We've had a few things going on there. you know. Not to mention the fact that then if you look a little further, before we took out Iraq, Dick Cheney and several others were in close relationships with Saddam Hussein. There's pictures of Dick Cheney with Saddam shaking hands over transactions that they were making in Iraq. So now you see, and then the next thing we do is we take out Saddam and he's dead. So now, unless you're living in a vacuum, the people in the Middle East are seeing this and they're going, wait a minute. And let me take it one step further. The JCPOA agreement was an international agreement. It was agreed upon with almost all the world powers, including China, Russia, United States, France, Germany, all came together to have that agreement. Now, you can have your own opinion about whether you think the agreement is good or bad, but if the entire major powers of the world come together and agree that this is the best way to stop them from developing a nuclear weapon, and we withdraw from the agreement and then turn around and crank up sanctions after we were one of the ones that spearheaded the agreement, what do you think? Think I might have a little difficulty? You think I might have a little difficulty trusting you? I don't know. You tell me. Is that a wild stretch to understand why they may have some disagreements? And from what I understand, today, I didn't see it yet, and I haven't read it yet, he enacted more sanctions today. So we'll see. But all I am asking you to do is open your mind. Don't close it. I love America just as much as you, and we do a lot more right than we do wrong. I'll even say that. But on occasion, we do some bad stuff. We do some bad stuff, and a lot of the bad stuff we do is driven on dollars. And I'll tell you, I oftentimes when I think about some of the things that we've done and are doing, I think about Rome and what happened to Rome. You know, the riches of Rome and that empire fell from all the greed and excessiveness that the people of Rome engaged in. And I would not want us to be that way. You know, that's not my vision. That's not my vision of America. I do think, again, I admit I'm a 60s kid. There was a time when I think we got pretty doggone close to what I think the vision of America should be. And I think in the mid-70s and the early 80s, especially the mid to late 70s, we had a pretty good situation in this country. And I think America was operating very much in a manner consistent with what I think our forefathers thought about. And then we hit the 80s, and then we just started sliding. We've been sliding a little bit backwards since then. And I've talked about it. I was in administration back then in a large company, and I can remember a raise for an average worker. And some of you who've been listening to me for a long time are going to say, "Oh, he's going to go on that again." A raise for an average worker was anywhere between 6 and 8%. And I know because I was administering raises back then for a corporation. And if you were an exceptional worker, you got anywhere between a 10 and 15% raise. That was in the 70s. Fast forward to 2020. The average raise is 3%. The economy has quadrupled. Stock prices have gone through the roof. The corporations are making more money than they've ever made ever. They eliminated pensions, and your average raise is 3%. Maybe I'm a little stupid, but somehow that math ain't working out for me because pensions cost money. And we went away from pensions and we went to 401ks. So there was a whole bunch of savings there. And so, but now a raise is 3%. A good raise is 4%. And 20 years ago, a good raise was 10%. And you're making more money than you've ever made. And there's no doubt that corporations are making more money now than they ever made. Yet incomes are stagnant. I don't understand. That's something I just don't understand. And that is contributing to our income inequality. And I have to say, I am so thankful to Greg, you great guy, for giving me a couple extra minutes to stand on my soapbox and preach.
IRSE basketball just a few moments away from the pregame show, folks.
Yeah. And thankfully, Greg gave me this a little bit of extra time. Yeah. And I hope that I have been able to enlighten you with some things. Happy New Year to you too, Greg, my friend.
Happy New Year, Rudy.
Yes, sir.
All right.
All right, man, this is great. And what's the record now?
IRSE is coming into this game with an 11-6 record.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, winning 7 straight.
Hey, okay. Well, my friend, I'd like to thank you so much for this extra time. And folks, I'd like to thank you for listening to the African American Scene. God bless you, be safe, and I will see you next Wednesday right here for the African American Scene.
The African American Scene has archives on YouTube. Look for WPSL TV on YouTube or just go to WPSLTV.com. Look for Rudy Howard's African American Scene.